It's just time for a change, and at some point, we got to be fed up. I just can't bear the conversations are being had, but the actions are not being taken. And
Yeah.
if we don't do it, like no time better than now. Might as well just go for it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the TROUPE Podcast. I am your host, choreographer, and trainer, Antoine TROUPE. Here we discuss everything related to dance training, creativity, and mindset to help you be your best self and do your best work. Today is a really, really special episode. I think this is going to be very helpful for a whole lot of people. I've been getting hit with a lot of questions in regards to agencies. So today we have Meisha from Clear Talent Group that's going to help us answer a lot of those questions that may be on your mind. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it. Let's get into this conversation. Meisha, first I want to just say hello. You can give your own intro just to who you are, how you became an agent. I would love to hear that. And then, we'll take it away from there.
Amazing. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the pod. I'm excited to be here and be as informative and educational as possible. So a background on myself, just a brief intro, I suppose.
Yes.
I'm born and raised in LA, so a little bit of a rare breed. I started dancing at the age of 3. My mom thought I would just look cute in a tutu, but I don't think she knew what she was getting herself into because I never stopped. I was a more typical, dance convention, competition dancer, I think you would say.
Okay.
And then I was a dance major in college as well as a communications major as well. And I kind of always had an interest in the business side of the industry. Of course, I loved being on stage, but at a certain point when I graduated college, I was like, okay, well, I'm not that good to be professional, but I love the industry and I had worked professionally all through college.
Nice.
So, and had worked with a few agencies and was like, okay, well, what's my next step here, So I applied to the agency will laugh at this, but I actually applied to be the executive assistant in the choreo and creative department at Clear Talent Group, not having any desk position other than your retail job or being a nanny, had no idea, right? And they're like, yeah, we love you, but you don't have the experience to be the executive assistant of the company. I was like, cool. They're like, but we have this receptionist position open. And I was like, okay, yeah, I just want an entry, literally start at the bottom, would be the equivalent to the mailroom.
Right.
But I was only the receptionist for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
But in that 2 months, I had learned so much because I worked hand in hand with our business affairs department. So I was responsible for client checks that were coming in, and what that process was. So after 2 months, I moved into the dance department as an assistant. I was there for almost a year, and then I eventually got that executive assistant position in the choreo and creative department, and was there for 4 months, and then was promoted to an agent in the dance department, and then added being an agent in the choreo department, and now I'm the co-director of the dance department. So quite the journey to get to where I am. Yeah. But from the very start, I was always just wanting to do more, wanting to learn more. I always had 1 year out in every conversation. And it'll be almost 7 years. So since I started working at Clear, which is actually insane. Time
goes by quick, huh?
Yeah, but I wouldn't change my path. I always say that I think I was meant not to get that original position because starting from where I did, I learned so much in those first couple months being at that level.
So what does your current role entail?
Yeah, so being the co-director of the dance department, We oversee the entirety of our dance department division. So we have, of course, several assistants under us that help us throughout the day, whether it be those thousands of audition calls or, whatever that may be. Planning events will hopefully come back,
Yeah.
all that thing. But I and my coworker, Tiffany, are the agents within the dance department. So, and I'm sure we'll dive into, what
Yes.
that means to be an
That's
agent in
that's
our
the first that's the
title.
first question.
And
That's the first question. So let's just go ahead and go get into that. So what is an agent? We'll just start there. What is an agent, and can you clarify an agent's role in a dancer's career?
yeah, absolutely. So to me, an agent is really the liaison between the production entity, whether that be, management, et cetera, and the client, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
here to facilitate the deals. But to me, it's so much more than that, and it's adaptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our role in someone's career can vary at times. We wear so many different hats throughout our day. I mean, yes, in terms of like the book, we negotiate contracts, we, send you out on auditions, we, make sure you're protected, make sure your payment gets in on time, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also, I always say that I always like to lead with being human first, and agent hat is an addition to that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
leading and being an agent with intention and having that human interaction first is so important. And I think at times can be lost along the way sometimes.
Right.
And at the end of the day, like, I'm a human, you're a human, and learning how to adapt per your client's needs, I think is the most important, because there's so many times where you could be giving advice, or each client works so differently from the next. So to just have one black and white way of how to be an agent isn't going to
Mm-hmm.
work, because some clients are going to want you to only text them, some clients are going to want phone calls, some clients are going to want to know every single submission that are submitting them on. So
Yeah.
you know we kind of wear, whether we be, mind you, very unlicensed therapists, or,
Right. Right.
just they need someone to talk to, we are willing to put on those hats, whether, and then in this split second, be like, okay, agent hat on, back to business. And I think that we have found at Clear Talent Group a really good balance between the two.
Right. So I guess that leads me actually to my next question is how do you cultivate that relationship? Say I'm a dancer and I just got signed. What do I do next? I think a lot of people are not clear. A lot of people just end up waiting on a call or waiting on a submission. And I feel like we can be doing more to build our relationship between dancer and agent. But what does that actually look like? Because maybe some people may feel like if they're reaching out too much, they're bothering you. If they're not reaching out enough, they get forgotten about. So what is the happy balance?
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to, it's all individual, right? Like, there's some, and we always say that our clients have our personal cells. They can call, text us, email, however in which they want to communicate, and however they want to communicate is okay with us. And we have like a whole system in place that, like, we have logs and logs and logs of every text, every call, that
Oh,
comes
wow.
through the agency. And if you don't get back, it's like literally red at the end of the day. And our assistant's like, you need to get back to these people before
Mm-hmm.
you leave. And I'm like, okay, got it. We'll do, because we want to make that a priority. And for us, it's really truly all about communication at the end of the day, because we can't be in every class. We can't be on Instagram all day long looking to see whose classes that they're taking. So we really rely on our clients to let us know, who they're training, what master class they're taking, and kind of having that check-in frequently, because you never know who's going to be sending in a submission or who's
Mm-hmm.
going to be requesting a submission at the end of the day. And
Mm-hmm.
that note that we can leave for that casting or for that choreographer or whoever it may be can get you the job, knowing that, hey, I know that, you've been training with Antoine and he sent me a submission. Maybe I'm texting them saying, hey, Antoine sent me a submission today. you know, maybe give them a ping or like whatever that communication may be. And also on the note on your side, you may, there's so many headshots that you see in a day, I'm sure,
Right.
as a choreographer when you get, requests. And sometimes someone that you love and work with on a regular basis for whatever reason gets missed. But if
Absolutely.
I leave that note saying, hey, they took your class on Tuesday and you called them out, there's a higher probability that that connection is going to get made.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. So I guess as they're training and making connections and networking, just keeping you up to date with what's going on in their life and how they're progressing throughout their career, essentially, right?
Exactly. And also us being knowledgeable of their goals that they have in mind. And we also understand that their goals, we can have a yearly meeting, but also between that time, someone's goals can change next week. They can change in
Right.
6 months. So that conversation has to be continual. It can't just stop at the 1 year mark and then we're not going to talk for until we can regroup in the next year when their contract's up. It just doesn't make sense like that. So knowing our clients' goals in mind, we can also, if we just so happen to know who's teaching master classes this week or who's teaching in the studio, or if we know someone's potentially having an audition coming up that the world may not know about, but we're going to send our clients that extra text, give them that extra phone call that says, hey, I know one of your goals is to work on this project. I see that they're teaching a master class. You should set your post notifications on so that you're the first to sign up because they typically sell out. Those type of conversations, it's on us too to acknowledge their goals and to show up for them when that time comes.
Nice. Thank you for that. Thank you. That provided a lot of clarity. And I want to maybe even get a little bit more specific. Would you say, because I'm really big on like systems and processes, and I want people to maybe take a new system and process from this. So would you say maybe, let's say a goal, say that like goal setting meeting or whatever you would call that once a year, and then maybe check in once a quarter or like with those goals?
At
Yeah.
least. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then maybe with updating you on what's going on within their training once a week, twice, once a week. Is that good?
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell my clients that, especially if like I'm relating to this, if a client's on a job and let's just say it's an outstanding job, or maybe it's a tour, maybe they're on a movie, where we kind of ensure that we check in on like every Sunday that they're sending me either a recap email or whatever it may be. And of course, if something pressing happens within the week, but ensuring that I'm either checking in on them or that they're checking in with me just to make sure all is well.
Yes, yes. Makes total sense. Okay, I mean that helps me a lot. I wish I would have known. I wish. Okay, so currently in this day and age, how does one get signed with an agency? Like I'm talking like post-pandemic era. A lot's changed. People aren't. I haven't seen many auditions happening. Right. How can someone tell which agency is best for them?
Okay.
And what kind of research should a dancer do to get an agency? So let's break that down. Let's do one by one.
Okay.
So how are people getting signed in this day and age?
Yeah, so it's definitely different. I mean, in LA, we haven't had an open audition. I think the last one was at KM, where I think it was like 750 people showed up. Insane. And so we haven't had that. I will say our New York office, they recently did have an audition in which it was video submission first, and then the callback was in person. So we are constantly trying to find innovative ways to make things more productive and still see dancers, face to face. And obviously, as an industry as a whole, we have to continue to, see dancers and find dancers. That's just the way that it is, especially with how plentiful of work that is happening right now. We're noticing, we're like, oh my God, our roster is booked. You have to find more people. And I will say right now, we review submissions, online submissions, every single Monday at our agency, where we sit down as an entire team and go through every submission that comes through. When you are submitting to an agency, make sure that you really have your materials together, because I can't tell you how many times where they're missing headshots, they're missing footage, we can't find their Instagram because it's not under their name. There's so many things that when we go back and email them and say, hey, this and this is missing, it, versus someone that has kind of a whole package deal, we're like, they're ready.
Yeah. And what is that? What is that whole package?
Yeah. So definitely headshots. And they honestly do not even need to be like, you don't have to pay the $500 for like the 4 different looks at this stage, right? Okay. We don't expect you to have that, because we're going to want to have a conversation with you once you do sign, of talking about your goals, talking about which photos that you're going to need to focus on, versus getting a shoot before you sign with an agency. I mean, we can tell you that none of these work for your goals. You focus on the wrong things, So headshots, just as long as it's like a decent current photo, because also there's so many times where we get outdated headshots that looks like you're literally in high school and you're definitely like 24, and we're looking at your Instagram and you're like, I don't even know you're the same person. Yeah. In terms of footage, having solo footage is so important. We don't know you, so when you send class footage, we're playing a guessing game of who you are. Unless in the instance in which that if a female is submitting and there's 2 male, it's like you're the only female in the group, like, okay, fine, I'll give that to you. But having solo footage is super important. I would say at this stage of submitting, a reel isn't going to do it for me. I would rather see individual clips of all the variations of styles that you can do, and as many of them as possible, so I can see how well-rounded you are as a dancer. Because if you're just sending me one specific style, then I'm going to have to email you back and say, do you have anything else that you can show me? So we have headshots, we have versatility within your footage, and then your Instagram, which plays a huge part of it. And this can be like literally a whole other topic that we get into about social media, but it truly is so important nowadays that I always say, when we're doing our submissions, our clients' Instagram handles on every single submission we do. So by the time you get that audition, it's almost like a callback at that point, if it's a close call, because they've already seen your headshot, they've already seen your resume, and they definitely have already seen your Instagram. So for us, it's about using your Instagram. You are your own business as a dancer. I think that's something that's not thought about that often. And having your own brand. And when I go to your page, I always use the rule of the 9 square. I don't know if you've heard that before, but basically,
I haven't.
So when you go on your Instagram, if you were to pull it up, your first 9 squares are what shows. That should encompass your brand at all times, because I'm sure you have been scrolling for days looking for a dancer's footage, and they don't have anything updated. Like, is this person even dancing anymore? Like, what's going on? So I would say, to alleviate that pressure off of the square 9 is to have highlights, and you can have that categorized however you want. I would have that first highlight be headshots, have all your headshots in there, whether they're professional or not. And then if you don't have any work, because typically, as I'm sure you've seen on Instagram, people are like using all their artist work or jobs that they have. If you don't have any jobs, literally put it out by style for your highlights. So when I'm looking at your page, and we're like, oh, here's all their jazz footage, and here's hip hop, and there's freestyle, and it's already there. You want to be bookable. You don't want someone to spend time on you trying to find how you're going to fit. You want it to literally scream at them, this
book
is
me.
And book me. I'm ready.
Right. Now, does that footage have to be professionally shot? What if it's on the phone?
Phone is perfect. You want to film in front of your garage because you loved the class you just took? Perfect. Don't care, as long as it's solely you, ultimately, at the end of the video.
Perfect. I already know that alone is going to help so many people.
Oh my God, no, don't spend money on professional footage at this stage. Don't. It's not necessary.
Perfect. Okay, so how can someone tell which agency is best for them?
So definitely doing your research is so important. And that really goes for everything within the industry, right? So I think it's important to meet with all the agencies if that's an option, because you'll really get to feel the energy per the agency and really ask them how they work individually. And I always say, if you should really go with the energy that you match with the best, because you're going to be working with this person hopefully for a very long time, and you want to ensure that you're going to be on the same page and how you want to be represented as a dancer. And I always say that my dancers are in the driving seat of their careers, and I'm not going to say no for a job for them. I am, truly, I go off of them. I'm here to provide opportunities. And once we were talking about earlier, being that liaison and facilitator and, talk to them about everything under the sun. And because we're doing that on such a frequent basis, it really is an energy thing. Because at the end of the day, all the agencies, we do the same thing. We have the same jobs. We submit on the same breakdowns. It's how that agent does their work that I think makes the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've seen that. I've heard that kind of thing from the management side, like who they like to deal with. I've experienced that being on the other side of it. And is it the same way for, what an agency, how an agency can tell if a dancer is right for their agency, or is it more than just the energy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things, I think, kind of encompassed into one. Before we take any meetings, we always look at our current roster and see what gaps that we're missing and if they're going to be a good fit. Because I think my worst fear is that a dancer is going to come to me and say that I just feel like I'm another number on their roster and they don't know who I am. And I don't know my agents. I'm not comfortable going to them. So before we meet with anybody, we take a good assessment of our roster, see if legitimately they have a good place, because otherwise we don't want to waste their time. Truly, we'd rather them go find someone that is fit for them. Right. So, and then of course in the meeting, if we feel like the energy is not off on our side, then that is something to seriously consider, because we want to work with good people just as much as they want to work with good people. And if the energy doesn't feel right, then we have no problem saying, I think you're best suited, somewhere else.
Yes. And when you say gaps, you're talking about like looks, right? Like a certain look that you may or may not have, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Right. Okay. And then what kind of research should a dancer do on an agency prior to auditioning for them?
So I think some of it is, of course, looking at our websites, seeing, who we represent. You can kind of gauge from our websites the work that we do. Like, for instance, at Clear Talent Group, we differ from the other agencies because we're full service. So although I always say, like, this meeting is for dance and movement representation only, there are of course benefits to having these other entities and these other departments within the agency. So that's like the one big difference between us and our competitors. And then I always say, talk to friends. That's huge. That's a huge part of your research, is talk to your friends that are at the agencies and see how they like it there and what their experience is. And I feel like a lot of that does help from, just talking to, and also talk to the choreographers that you trust as well, right, and ask how they like working with that agency, because that's a big part of communication as well, is how does the agents work with the buyers? And if you have a relationship with the choreographer, most of the time they can, recommend you to an agency based off of who they think will be the best fit for your career.
Got it. Well said. Makes sense. Okay. I think this next question, this is what I'm passionate about, and okay. I want to change it somehow. But in the past decade, this is my 10th year. This is my 10th year in LA. And since I have moved here, the rates for dancers haven't really changed much. The training has become more expensive all around the country. And everything else in the world has become more expensive, but dancers' rates have stayed the same. So how can the dance community and agents and agencies, how can we come together to change that? What can be done about that to make the shift?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and something that we're as equally as passionate about at Clear, and constantly figuring out ways and how we can be the change. And ultimately, I think that there shouldn't be a divide between the agencies and the dance communities, because the agencies are a part of the dance community, and working together as one whole community instead of working separately in two different entities to kind of solve the same problem is how effective change will happen at the end of the day.
So how can we go about, because I don't think most dancers I speak to, I feel like they feel that even when I was asking questions or trying to get questions from other dancers, I can just hear frustration in their voice, because I feel like they feel like there is a separation, and they feel like agencies, just care about the agencies and don't care about the dancers. Mm-hmm. So how do we shift that? How do we make that change? How do we try to build a better connection? Because I think that's the only way it can work. Like, we have to know each other and be familiar with each other and actually, have conversation, have discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think conversations like this is part of it, right? Even sitting here and you and I just having a candid conversation of, how can we bridge this gap when the gap shouldn't even be there, because we're all fighting for the same thing at the end of the day. And for me, I always have, an open door policy, which in this terms, it's an open phone policy, right? Can't have clients in quite yet, but soon. I always have an ear out to the industry. I always, if someone has concerns on a job, when we're sending them information, that dialogue goes both ways. That if I see something that's posted, or if a choreographer, or let's just say a producer, is emailing me and I immediately see that, the rates are below industry standards, I think that somewhere where it gets lost is, legally as agents, we have to present the offer to our client given the initial information. We cannot go to the buyer and start negotiating on behalf of our client without getting permission from the client to then go back and negotiate. So when we present the offer to our client, of course, or I should say I, and here at Clear Talent Group, we give the information that's provided and say, hey, these rates are below industry standard, or you know what, these rates are at what is the minimum, which somehow the minimum has become the standard. And that's also language within the community that needs to be recognized, that these are minimums that are set. They shouldn't be the standard of what is set. And I feel like, whether it be labels or record companies, they take this as Bible, right? That this is the standard when it's actually not. These days. So having that open dialogue with the client and saying, hey, these are the rates that were presented to us. However, these are the minimums. I think that we should try to go back. You've been with this camp for X amount of years, and any standard job, you would be receiving rate increases. And having that open dialogue in return, I hope creates a conversation with all of the community. And hopefully they're like, well, I was comfortable talking to my agent about these rates. And then it kind of has a trickle effect. And that's how change is made on jobs, whether it's the dancers standing together in unison, fighting for the rates on a job, or whether it may be. But we're here to support our clients, and standing together in the fight is much stronger than standing separate.
So it's really just up to us to come together and say, we're not accepting this or that. The dancers,
which is so hard, because ultimately, is there going to be a dancer that says, I need to pay my rent this month, I need to accept this job? So it's kind of, the mentality of, well, someone wants this job, we'll just find a replacement. It's like, well, you're still dealing with me at the end of the day, and I'm still the agent working on the project, and I'm going to be asking for the same thing. So it doesn't matter if you hire this person or a replacement, we're still asking for these same standards. And that's when they kind of go, oh, got it. It's not the person, it's the job,
Right, exactly. So we got to kind of like force their hand, kind of.
It's
We
all
have to
about
just take a
education at
stand.
the
Yeah,
end of the day. Our job is also to educate these producers, these casting directors, these record labels of what is the standard and what is the expectation of these dancers and what they're deserving of and the value that they bring to these sets. It's our job to be the education
yeah,
to, more than just, oh, negotiating a contract, negotiating terms. We have a responsibility at the
yeah.
end of the day to advocate for our dancers and for the industry.
Okay. I'm gonna go on a whole campaign of raising these rates.
Okay.
I
Just
promise
send them
you.
my way, Antoine, okay?
Okay, I will. I promise you I will. Because it's just time for a change. And at some point, we got to be fed up. I just can't bear the conversations are being had, but the actions are not being taken. And
Yeah.
if we don't do it, like no time better than now. Might as well just go for it. You
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So what myths can you debunk for us as far as agents, agencies, and how they work?
I would love to ask what these myths that you have and what you've heard.
I actually don't even know. I don't know if I was more so expecting, because I know that there's a lot of myths when it comes to like choreographers and how things works for us. I just can imagine there being some kind of I don't know, maybe people not understanding how it actually works with, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that a lot of people think that we're just like robots behind a computer that just like negotiate contracts and like I don't even know what people think that we do,
Yeah.
but that's not the case by any
Hmm.
means. I think that that is a misconception, right? And
Hmm.
I think what I'm trying to debunk is that, leading with what I was saying, leading with intention and leading with that human interaction
Hmm.
is so important, especially in this day and age,
Yeah.
because, there are a lot of conversations that need to be had, especially, during the pandemic. Let's say if someone lived at home, there needs to be that conversation of like, okay, well, you have three different scenarios when you get an audition. It can
Hmm.
be a conversation of, you know what, this is a national commercial and you can make six figures. So we're going to move mountains and you're going to get here. How are we
Hmm.
going to get here?
Hmm.
Or it could be, you know what, there's this choreographer attached to the project. I know that you are not currently living in LA. However, I think this is going to be a great connection for you, a great opportunity, will lead to multiple bookings. What can we do? Or it can be, you know what, the rates aren't worth the trip. It ain't going to even cover your flight. We're not going to
Yeah.
stress about this any further. Let's just say no.
Hmm.
So I think that having these conversations with all of our clients, whether they be about jobs or life, things that they're going through,
Yeah.
I think will change the way in which that we all perceive agents within the community. And
Hmm.
knowing that they can go to us and me about whether they just had a hard day and they just need to talk to someone,
Hmm.
or whether it be that they're on set and they said cue the rain and they're staying in a car and that wasn't in the creative, and that they can
Hmm.
text me and that they know and they trust that it's going to get done at the same time.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess just debunking the whole
Hmm.
my agents don't work for me. I work, like, I feel like I'm putting in all the work, where it's a two-way street, and that
Hmm.
trust and that there's responsibility on both sides of the coin.
Right.
Absolutely. And
That
taking
was
accountability as well. Like, we're
yeah.
humans and we may make a mistake, but it's taking that accountability on our side at the end of the day too, as well as our clients' accountability. So
Hmm.
just keeping everyone accountable at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
I'm glad you said that. I guess that is the one thing I've always heard is what is it like your agents
Should work
don't
for you.
yeah, should work for you, right? Like you don't work for them, right?
Right.
So
Whereas,
you
like, no, we should be working together as a team at the end of the day. Going back to the beginning of our conversation, saying, I can't be on social media all day seeing what classes you're getting into, but you giving me this information, I can then better represent you. And that's right there working as a team.
Right. Okay. Okay, so what is proper protocol when a dancer is contacted by a choreographer to be directly booked, right? Once they receive the call, what does the next steps look like for them, for a dancer? What should the next steps look like?
I mean, let's be honest, we are in an era of social media. We are in an era of direct bookings. And at the end of the day, I always tell my clients that there are several different ways in which that you can handle this scenario. Mm-hmm. A being just being like, hey, great, fantastic. Please, I'm represented by CTG. And then you're like, great, that's my instruction that I'm going to need to reach out to the agency, right? Or here's my agent's phone number, and then I'll get a phone call. So however they want to do that, whether it be because we've heard that there's some productions that don't want to work with agents. And then I'm also like, well, that's a red flag. If they don't want to work with agencies, there's something that's a red flag for me, and also should be for our clients as well. But there's ways in which that we can go around that, because at the end of the day, we want our clients to be protected, and we've seen contracts that are crazy when they try not to involve us. I always say there's this one brand that likes to hold clients exclusive for like 3 years. Wow. And there have been times where contracts already signed, nothing we can do. And yeah, it's a terrible, terrible situation. They were undercut. There's been a scenario where one client looped us into a project, and we got them triple the amount of money versus the client that ran it on their own. It's like my heart hurts. It hurts because these brands or these producers think by cutting an agent out, they can get a deal because they're assuming this person wants the job, and they're taking advantage of that scenario. So for us, it's immediately just let them know who you're signed with. If it's a legitimate situation, they will go through the proper channels of communication, right? But if they don't want to work with agents, then we just stay in constant communication with our clients. I've had clients literally like text me like the emails or the text that they get, and I'm writing it back. They're copying, pasting, what I'm saying. They're sending me the contract. I'm sending them voice notes of what to say back, because we want to be there to support our clients, and it's purely about protecting them at the end of the day. There's also scenarios in which, for instance, let's say they get booked on a job directly, but on our side, we're pitching them to you, not knowing that they're booked on that project. And then all of a sudden I'm giving them a phone call like, hey, submitted you to Antoine, submitted you directly. He wants to book you. And you're like, oh, well, so-and-so contacted me and I'm doing this. And I'm like, oh, great. Well, that's nice. So now you're going to be mad. You're not going to trust me as much for sending you someone that's not available, and then so on and so on and so on. So even if it's just like letting us know that this job is happening, giving us the information, sending us the contract to make sure that you're protected and that we're not submitting you and pitching you when ultimately you're not available.
Got it. I'm really just hearing communication.
Oh
communication.
My God. Let's just
it's really
make it the whole topic of this podcast, right? Communication, transparency.
Yes. yes. I think, you said it, the trust. I think it's hard for dancers to really trust their agents, and I get it. I felt the same way. But once again, I think it goes back to like really just having that relationship. I think we have to start building the trust amongst each other.
Yeah,
a stronger
and that
trust
hurts
with each
me, by the way. like that someone could not trust their client, and that would kill me if someone came to me and said like, hey, I just don't feel like we have a relationship, or we built that trust with one another, or that communication is not as strong as it should be. At the end of the day, I failed doing my job. That is our whole premise, right, is
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that our clients feel comfortable, whether it be on set or, any other entity that we're
Yeah.
communicating with them. So,
Yeah. We gonna make some changes. We gonna figure some things out. I'm
yeah,
gonna have some other things I'm gonna ask you about after the
yeah,
podcast. We're gonna
yeah,
figure
yeah,
some
yeah.
things out. Okay, so here's a quick. This one should be pretty easy. Our agency's fees. This is for somebody who's obviously never had an agent before,
Of course.
is not aware yet. But are agency fees taken out of your check or is it on top?
I would say majority of the time we're able to negotiate our fees on top. There's pretty rare instances in which when we send out our auditions or submissions or whatever it may be, it's always very clear what the rate structure will be. So we'll either say the job is, let's just random numbers, like 1,000
Mm,
plus agency fees. That means you get the full $1,000 and we get our fee separately. If you
yeah.
ever see the word flat in an audition breakdown, that means that in your mind, we were, for whatever reason, unable to negotiate our fees on top of the rate. So you know that you're going to be getting 900 and we're going to get 100. So in your mind, you should think, I'm getting $900 for this job.
Right. 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 So I feel like. Do you think? I mean, I kind of feel like people sometimes. I think maybe dancers are afraid to ask. They feel like people just don't have the money, and I think that's a misconception. A lot of times they don't. They just try to make you feel like we don't have it, so they can give you the least that they possibly can.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. No, you're not wrong. And then all of a sudden you get to set and they have you there for 14 hours and you're like, but you have all this money to play overtime.
Right. 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 Oh man, what an industry we are in. But
It's really
uh, what do you think is the key to a dancer's success in 2022 and moving forward?
This is kind of going to be cheesy, but I think being a good person ultimately.
I think
I
that's true.
think when you look at dancers that are booked time and time again, of course, are they extremely talented? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, they're good people. They're a good
Mm-hmm.
person. Because when you're in the room, whether it be a short project or a long term project, you want to be in a room with people that bring good energy to the environment and they want people that are going to encourage their creativity at the end of the day and not bring it down.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what kind of makes a bookable dancer is you can be the most talented person in that room, but if you come with negative energy or with bad attitude or whatever that may be, then uh, that's going to get around, first of all,
Yeah.
and that person may not hire you again. But
Yep.
by being authentically yourself in these rooms are going to get you the furthest, for sure.
Yes. Yes. Well said. Um, I wanted to touch on something else off of what you just said. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. So, how do you think a dancer should be preparing for these jobs? Like in their process, in their training, how can they better prepare to work? I have a lot of my own opinions, but I like to hear from an agent.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And I think that it's really hard to prepare to
Mm,
be on a job. You can take a million mentorship classes, you can get
right.
into as many master classes as possible, but nothing's going to prepare you in the same way as like actually being on the job. I always like
For
compare it to
sure.
like an internship, like when you are taking a college course and then all of a sudden you're in a work. I'm like, I never learned any of this. That's for sure. Like you learn the most while you're on a job, but what you can do in the meantime is thoroughly do your research. I think that it is something that somewhere along the lines has gotten lost in
Mm,
terms of knowing who, whether it be the brand, whether it be the choreographer, whether it be the director, really embracing the knowledge portion of this industry.
mm,
And when you have these goals that you're looking up either the current creatives or the past creatives. You're looking at the history of the artist, where their projection is going moving forward, and taking time. It's not just about taking a million classes in a day and exhausting your body to the point of when these opportunities come up, you're so tired that, ultimately you may not be your best. So for me, it's about taking the time. And I always say that there's like 3 type of classes that you should be taking a week. It should be 1, because you love to dance and you love this class and it makes you feel good. 2, for networking opportunities. And then 3, which I am totally blanking on right now. On to me, I'm like networking, 1 for yourself. Oh, and 1 for training.
Yeah.
It's something that's going to take you out of your comfort zone and is going to push you to your limits. So those are the 3 type of classes that you should be concentrated on. And also the frequency within those classes, the frequency within that networking class. It's not going to be enough to take that class once and then just say, yep, I made that connection. It's about showing up on a consistent basis, whether that be every week or every time they teach that master class, so they can get to know you.
Yes, that was really, really good. I hope y'all took notes on that and wrote those 3 down. That's very good.
I love it that takes notes. When they're like got out the notepad and they're like prepared for the meeting and they're like, I have all these questions. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are overtraining too. Like, I'm glad you mentioned that, and they're just destroying their bodies.
Yeah.
But continuing on, can you name? This is kind of like a twist on the last question, but can you name 3 major traits your top clients have in common outside of work experience?
Yeah, going back to being a good person. I think loyalty is huge.
Mm-hmm. And what do you mean by that, by loyalty?
Loyalty in terms of when you get booked on a job, and let's say you have a loyalty to that camp, or you have a loyalty to the artist or the choreographer, whoever that may be. And when a shiny new toy comes coming around, that it's going to be hard to say no to this. But because you have already accepted this job that at the time you were very excited about, is there something that has to go with sticking to your commitments and not breaking them? Because eventually you're going to break so many that, board's going to get around that, oh, well, I'm afraid to book this person because they left so-and-so's job at the last hour because this person, and is my job less important than this?
Right.
So I think, and it's hard right now because, like I was mentioning earlier, there are plentiful amount of opportunities and everyone's just excited to have work and excited to have a check. But sometimes you really have to think to yourself, knowing the projection of, I always say that the dance calendar of the year, right? Like what jobs kind of happen at certain points. So knowing that the billboards or award show or whatever it may be is coming up, and you are hopeful for an opportunity, or you've had conversations with someone that you may think, or that is a goal of yours, maybe you have to sacrifice and say no to the opportunity that's in front of you, to take the risk to get the yes at the end of the day. Because what you don't want to do is say yes to this opportunity, continue, even though you have this job here that you confirmed for, even though your goals over here, you have to be okay with saying no to ultimately maybe not get booked at all. But because you want this one so much more, it's the right thing to do in this scenario. So that's what I mean in terms of loyalty is, it's also about being smart, a smart dancer. Yeah. So I would say those were, did I say 3?
That was 2. Good person, loyalty.
And a smart dancer.
Smart dancer.
Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned the dance calendar, essentially like what kinds of jobs are happening throughout the year. Is there anywhere to find a visual of that, or anywhere that dancers can like explore and be able to like really find all of that kind of information?
No, but that would actually be genius to create. So
okay, another thing on my list that I need to do.
We'll add it to your list, right?
Got it. Okay, thank you so much. This has been super, super helpful.
I'm happy.
Seriously.
Happy to
Okay, so if a dancer was in the process of switching agencies, what is the proper protocol to go about that as far as, I guess, communications?
Sure. So I would always say lead with transparency. Talk to your current agent about, address the concerns that you have with them and why, and really talk about if you think that you can fix it. And if you can't, then at least letting them know what you need in your representation moving forward. And this is why you decided to part ways. I would also meet with, like I was saying in the beginning, meet with multiple agencies. It's no mystery that clients switch agencies. It happens to literally all of us, no matter how good you think you are at representing or how good you may feel the relationship is. Sometimes it's beyond that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we hear like, I need change. And that's okay. And that's hard sometimes for us agents to swallow. Yeah. But ultimately we have to support our clients and respect their decisions at the end of the day. But I think leading with transparency with your current agency is always the most important. Also, if let's just say you have any outstanding obligations with your agency, making sure that you're honoring those agreements or those contracts that are in place, right. Things like that, I think is really important.
Right. Okay, so one thing that comes to my mind is, a lot of these dancers are young, right? And they may not feel super comfortable with dealing with conflict or confrontation, that kind of thing. And I know as an agent, you have to deal with, like, you have to have the heart for that.
Literally an everyday thing, yeah.
All the day, every day, all day, I'm sure. Yeah. So how would you, just on a human level, how would you encourage someone to kind of like work up that muscle or work up that skill of dealing with hard conversations?
I think going to people in a circle of people who they trust and kind of having the conversation with them first, right? And getting their feedback on the conversation and, what they, getting opinions, but also staying true to your own thought, I think is important. Because I think at times when, you get advice from so many people, eventually what you originally came with gets lost somewhere. Right. But I think it is helpful to bounce ideas off of, and uncomfortable conversations are comfortable. They always will be. And sometimes you just have to, move forward. And at the end of the day, and it's worse, I think, to procrastinate those conversations. And it's going to be weighing on you for the week or however, months, years at times, versus as soon as you have the conversation, you're like, wow, that was.
Yeah, you kind of set yourself free.
Right.
It's like it's out.
There's all the things. Exactly. Yeah. So I know we keep going back to communication and transparency, but that's all that we hope for at the end of the day.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. So this one's a little bit of a challenging conversation, but not conversation, but challenging question. But why is it that some dancers kind of fall through the cracks when it comes to submissions, and maybe they were perfect for something, but they didn't get that call and they're with the agency? How does that happen, and how can dancers prevent that from happening?
Yeah, I think, I can respond of how things work at Claire Talent Group. I can't speak for all the agencies, but at Claire, we're really proud that we have a smaller dance roster than some of the, other agencies. And that's what we say is like completely by design of the company, because we have these different streams of revenue coming in. By design, we can keep our roster smaller. We don't have to sign every dancer that walks through our door, kind of a quality over, quantity situation. So what we say is, if you're on a roster, you deserve to be there. And if you fit the spec, you get the submission. That doesn't mean that you get the audition, because we're not in charge of selects on private calls, closed calls, invited calls, all those things, right? So, but if you fit the spec, you're going to get the submission if you are available for the project. That's how we work at Claire. So, and like I said, we're human. And if we make a mistake, then please let us know immediately if you hear something and you think that this kind of goes back to transparency, everything in communication that we're talking about, is if one of my clients hears of an audition or submission that is happening, and for whatever reason they didn't get it, I can only hope that they feel comfortable enough to come to me and say, hey, what was that submission process like? Or I heard this audition's happening, what was the spec for it? And then we can have those conversations and say, hey, actually, is your friend a guy? Because it's only a male submission.
Right.
Or hey, you're 5'1" and they were looking for girls that were 5'7".
Yeah.
And at that point, or for instance, if we get this submission and it's a closed audition and we're like, wow, this person was like really great for the project, I think maybe they were overlooked. Like, it's also our job to look at that list and tell the choreographer or casting whoever's in that position and say, hey, I think you missed so and so. I know you hired them a bunch in the past, just double checking. And most of them would be like, oh, well, they're not right for this creative. And preemptively, I can tell my client, hey, by the way, I know you're going to see that Antoine's having a submission. However, I already spoke to him. It's not the right fit this time around, but he's got you on the next. Whatever that may be, I can only hope that my clients feel comfortable coming to me and asking, hey, what's this project that's happening today? Or I saw this audition happening. Was I on this submission? Totally fine to question me. I'm always going to be honest if you were on it or not. And 99.9% of the time, you're going to be on the submission. And if they say, this is my favorite, is like if they're taking a master class and someone says, hey, I'll see you tomorrow. And you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And they hit me up. They're like, hey, Meisha, Antoine said that I'm going to see them tomorrow. Do you know what that's about? I'm like, yeah, he's having an audition, but he didn't call you in. And then I'm going to hit you up and say, hey, no Joe Schmo took your class today. You said that you're going to see them tomorrow, but you didn't call them. Do you want them to go? And then you're most likely like, oh, yeah, totally. Yes, send them. Just communication. That's all it is. But at Clear Talent Group, if you fit the spec, you're going to get the submission regardless. So
I like it. Okay, so how are agencies adapting to social media and post-pandemic era?
Yeah, I would say, going off of like our clients' Instagram handles are on every submission that we do. Part of our signing process or our initial meeting is walking them through their Instagrams and going in depth in what changes and revisions that we can make to make them that bookable dancer that we were talking about, earlier. And if there is an audition and it is purely a submission process, if a choreographer has two Instagrams in front of their face, two very similar vibes, is it going to be the determinant factor at the end of the day of who is more bookable, who has more footage, who has more work to show? Because your Instagram, it used to be like, oh yeah, like your reel is like your, digital form of your resume. Like, no, your Instagram is now.
Right.
Because in a reel, although I will say there definitely once you have enough work to put together a reel, I do think reels are very important. Because we're living in such a visual digital era that having people want to see the digital representation of that, right? The visual representation of a resume is not enough for them to just like look at a piece of paper anymore. They want to see the visual of it. So putting that on your Instagram and making sure that, whether it be your highlights, the rule of 9, having clear and concise, whether it be your spec being, 5'9", non-union, clear talent group. Perfect. They know how to find you. They're not having to DM you. They turned up in your other folder. How frequently are you checking those folders? So long story short, we go into a very deep conversation in terms of Instagram branding and all that stuff. So I think because we are tapped in on socials and, like I think I was mentioning in the beginning of the conversation, we are constantly coming up with new ways. As our industry is changing, we as agents also have to adapt to these industry changes as well. And It's not enough anymore just to, submit in the same regard in which we were years ago. Right. So I won't give away all my secrets on this podcast. Right. But we definitely.
But you are making steps to adjust.
Exactly.
To the times.
Yeah.
And I guess our agencies managing, or not managing, but our agencies representing kind of like, what about the like influencer types that are getting those kinds of deals?
Yeah, so we have a completely separate department for digital branding, where they work with influencers. Once again, being benefit of being full service, because for me, we have enough on our plate as agents with just the work that's coming through. I can't imagine working on digital for my clients as well. And I did have a very heavy hand in making sure our digital department was successful and training them and, contracts and all that stuff. So I did oversee that department for a good period of time. And yeah, no, they're standalone department with their own agents and their own roster. And
Got it.
of course, heavy involved in dance, but yeah, I think it's important that our dancers also have representation when a deal comes through. So we're happy that we're able to provide that for them.
Very cool. Very cool. This actually came to mind because I don't know if it's happening as much anymore, but definitely during the pandemic, everything was video submissions, right?
Yeah.
What is the key to a successful video submission?
I love this topic. I have seen many a video submission.
Yeah.
And for me, I think a lot of the times when you get a video submission, I would say moving forward, it's most likely going to be for a commercial. Most of the time, TV, film, they're still heavily using video submissions. And I always say, do your research on the brand. For sure. Take a spatial awareness of what's going on in your space. No one's asking you to like go rent out a studio or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And think of like the brand that you're working for. Make sure that there's like no competitive brands. And like if it's for like a Coca-Cola commercial, like make sure like a Pepsi can isn't like sitting in the back. Or I always say, if you're auditioning for like a McDonald's commercial, look up the brand's colors, look at where their most recent commercials have been, look at their Instagram, what direction is the brand moving in, and encompass that within your video submission. So like don't wear like red and yellow, so like blatantly, but maybe wear red because it'll be a subconscious thing that the ad agency or the casting director or the client from McDonald's in the room is going to gravitate towards you. So by wearing something like red or yellow, not both, would, brings that familiarity and they don't even know why, but subconsciously you're tricking them into, having the brand messaging already tied within.
Yes, that's smart. That's being a smart dancer.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really the key. People don't realize they focus so much on having the skill set, the being able to hit the step, and it's so much more to it when you're stepping into this business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, making sure, even if it's like a dedicated spot within your apartment nowadays, or your place, your home, wherever, your place of living. And, it doesn't have to be, the biggest of the spaces, but just making sure it's a clean background at the end of the day goes, because if you have a bunch of stuff, like if your laundry and your kitchen and like all these things are like in the background, these casting directors, these ad agencies, like they're just like focusing on, they're not dancers. They don't come from this industry and they're focusing on everything else except for you. So environment is super, even if you get outside and do something, just all things to think of.
Right. What about, I don't know, what are you seeing, I don't know, energetically or look wise or how they speak to the camera? Or do you have any notes in regards to those things?
I say take a commercial acting class, even if you are terrified, because I think that there's this misconception within the industry that like just as much as choreographers are friends and we talk about dancers in their class and who they think is growing, so do casting directors are literally teaching these commercial workshops and they're literally all friends. So by getting just in front of one commercial workshop, you're literally getting in front of multiple casting directors because they're taught by casting directors. And I don't know why people don't talk about this more, but it's like just take an improv class, take a commercial workshop, take an acting class, because once again, you're investing in your career and when a casting director is going through our submissions and they say like, oh, I see that this person takes this workshop or has taken this workshop, well, that person's going to get the audition over someone that hasn't, even if they may have like a better look for that they're looking for per se. So.
Oh, wow. Do you have any you would recommend, any of those commercial workshops?
Yeah, absolutely. So Killian's workshop is really great. I would say Groundlings is a really great improvisational course that you can do. And if you're my client, just hit me up and we have a whole resource list for you. Nice. But those are two on the top of my mind.
That helps a lot. Well, thank you. I mean, that's all I had for today.
Amazing.
It's cleared up a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I guess I would just want to ask, how can they follow up with you? Where should they follow you in the agency? All that kind of stuff. Where can they find more information?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can follow Clear Talent Group on Instagram. And if you're interested in submitting to us, you can submit at dance@cleartalentgroup.com.
Perfect. And I'm going to leave. I usually give like a daily challenge, something for dancers to go act on right now that can make a difference in their life and their career. I'm going to pass that over to you. Maybe one thing, put you on the spot. One thing that you feel like a dancer should do today or tomorrow that can make a difference in their life and career or career.
Wow, that's something. Okay. I'm like, wow.
No pressure. Yeah, I didn't include this. I didn't prompt you on this.
A challenge. I would say pick a choreographer and do their no, that's not good. Let me do that. Okay. Pick an artist in which you want to work for. And do your research, deep research, and watch performances from when they very first started versus now, and learn a piece from each tour that they did.
Oh, I love that.
I mean,
let's
that
go,
might
dancers.
Take more than like a day tonight, but it's
gonna take some time
for themselves.
That is a good challenge. I can't wait to see it. Post it and tag me and tag Meisha.
There you go.
All right, thank you so much, Meisha, for coming on to the TROUPE Podcast. Much love. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have an amazing night.
Thanks, Antoine. Bye.
Bye. Okay. So thank you all so much for tuning in to the TROUPE Podcast. That was a lot of information. I hope you're taking notes. I'm sure you are. That cleared up a lot of things that I definitely never knew, and I wish. I don't know. I'm not even gonna wish. I'm just gonna focus on moving forward and doing my part to make the change. But also, all of us dancers, everybody who's listening to this podcast right now, you have to do your part. And it starts with, this is not even just like to just try to just push the podcast, but all of this information, share it. There's so many people that need this, especially the part where she talked about, we have to, essentially, it's up to the dancers to say no, and we won't accept these rates. And we have to essentially demand what we want, which is what I felt. But that really just validated it for me. Really, we have all the power. It's in our hands. We just have to do something about it. So that's my challenge. It starts now. It starts today. It starts as soon as you get your next call. It starts with the conversations that you're having with your friends. We have to start making this shift. And the reason it's important is, obviously people have bills, but the thing is, you should not have to, there shouldn't be so many such talented dancers that are like struggling, especially with how much we put our bodies through, how much we put our minds through. We just need to be better supported in the financial component of what we do is a big part of that. Like I mentioned, training, the rates for these conventions has gone up over the years. You know what I mean? Classes in LA are now more expensive. I'm sure it's happening all over the world. Everything in the world is going up. We know gas is crazy right now. Everything's going up, but the dancers rates stay the same. And the problem is we accepted it and we continue to accept it and then still complain. And it's going to take some sacrifice. It's going to take us, I understand, sometimes it's like, dang, I need to take this job so I can be able to do this. But we need to set ourselves up to where and I'm being empathetic. Like, I know this is easier said than done, but we have to find ways to set our life up to where we have everything covered, to where we have the power to say no. It's there's so much freedom. It's so empowering to be able to say no and not be forced to do anything. So it really starts with us. Whoever's listening to this, make sure you go ahead and share this. Send this to someone you care about. Send it to as many dancers as you possibly can. Go ahead, share it, spread it out, and let's start making a change. Much love. Thank you for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Much love. Enjoy your day.